Thank you very much. Well, I see a lot of gear tonight, a lot of interesting clothes. I see right at the front here, Peter, WEXIT. I like that. I like owning the word. Sometimes when the Toronto Star or the CBC says redneck, they mean it in a negative way. That's just because they've never worked a hard day in their life, or maybe they got a redneck from the town. They think it's an insult. I see a lot of oil sands. I see a Stop the Carbon Tax shirt, Nicole. That's one of my favorites. We had a great rally, remember that, a few years back. I see some WEXIT hats, some Make Alberta Great Again hats, some Republic of Alberta hats. And the fact that everyone is looking to express themselves in a different way, maybe it's pipelines, maybe it's the oil sands, speaks to the fact that we have a lot of different problems that aren't being solved and everyone's looking for an answer. And originally I thought, well, let's have a debate, pro versus con, or as the Brits would say, leave versus remain, right? That's what they called it in Bexte. But as I talked to my friends on the panel, I realized that maybe we're not quite there yet, because I see at least 4 different approaches that I bet people in this room would support more or less. Some people would support what's being called the firewall approach, or sometimes called the Alberta agenda approach, which is really what Quebec has been doing for the last generation. Using all their rights under the Constitution, not being shy about making demands, having their own programs, whether it's their own police force, their own pension, their own immigration policies. Let's call that the firewall approach. I think that would appeal to people, and I think that's what Jason Kenney's looking to do. Then there's outright independence. Then there's independence with some sort of affiliation with the United States. Maybe being a state, maybe being a territory, maybe something looser. Free trade, perhaps, pipelines for sure, I don't know. And then there's the question, well, would it be Alberta or Alberta plus? Plus what? Saskatchewan? Maybe part of British Columbia or all of British Columbia? When I had the Western Standard magazine a dozen years ago, we had a columnist who was a proud Albertan. He also had a sense of humor. He said, no, it's not just Alberta. Part of British Columbia, the interior, we should have a new province called Albumbia. That's Rick Dolphin, if you remember. And he would write about Albumbia all the time. And he actually wrote an anthem for Albumbia. Now, it was tongue-in-cheek, and he was having a lot of fun. He's a very cheeky guy. But there's something to it. I mean, when you drive west a bit from Lake Louise and go into BC, and you're in, Golden, BC, you're in Alberta still. Come on. So, is that the option? One of the questions I had for Peter the other day when he was on the show was, is this something you do to get out of Canada, or is this you send MPs to Ottawa, or do you have a provincial party? There's about 10 different permutations. So I think before we get down to a yes or no, leave or remain debate, I think we got to figure it out a little bit. Now, when Professor Cooper comes, I know he's taken a scholarly approach to these things, and he's written academic papers, but they're pretty understandable for a professor. And I look forward to him helping us find our way. But we're going to proceed, and he'll join us as we go. And what I think I'm going to do is invite everyone to give a 6-minute opening remark, plus or minus a bit, I'll nudge you. And then another 6-minute round to respond to everyone else. And then we're going to open it up. We're going to open it up to you. Now, you don't get 6 minutes each, I'm afraid, because then only a handful of people. So we're going to try and keep the comments or questions quick. We're going to have a 30-second rule. I'm sorry. I know you're thinking that's a bit ironic. You saying a 30-second rule. That's like a vegetarian saying he likes KFC. Ezra, you're not a 30-second guy when it comes to talking. I want to say one last point before I yield the microphone to Lorne Gunter. What's the Rebel doing here? What's Rebel News doing here? Do we have an official position? Well, I mean, I'm from Alberta originally, although I'm in exile out there in Toronto these days. I think even within our organization, we might have different points of view. There's a lot of people who follow Rebel News who are not in Alberta. In fact, numerically, Toronto is our biggest viewer base, if you can believe it, even though our heart's in the West. We have even people around the world who follow us for various reasons, including our championing of free speech and Tommy Robinson, just for one example. So I see, for now at least, the role of Rebel News is to be the good faith journalistic home of this debate. A house of debate that will allow people to say what's on their minds without smearing people as bigots or sexists or racist or whatever the CBC and the Toronto Star and the rest of them do. I have been thinking. I have read so many op-eds in the Toronto Star and the CBC that sound like this. Hey Alberta, we really like you, but as a friend, you should know you're going to have to leave it in the ground, and we'll help you through this transition. And Alberta, we know your rage, and it comes from fear, and it's just, I feel like I'm in, you know, a first-year vegetarian studies program, and I'm the only, I just feel, and then it dawned on me, maybe they're actually pro-WEXIT people trying to make Albertans so angry that they're trying to drive us out. Oh my God, what I've read in the Star and the CBC. That's not going to be us. We're going to report on the genuine grievances of the West fairly and honestly. We're going to report on these debates fairly and honestly, and we're not going to sneer, because we know something is wrong when 400 people show up on 5 days' notice on a cold night to talk about something as abstruse as Brexit. Something is wrong in a province if that's happening. And we're not going to mock it and make fun of it because we want to understand it and help it. And when I was a boy, a teenager, I remember that was the role that Ted Byfield and the Alberta Report, the Western Report, helped play for the Reform Party. Was Ted a backer of the Reform Party? You bet he was. But much more important than just being part of it, he was the only honest reporter around who told the story without mockery. All right, well, I've already used up my 6 minutes, haven't I? Without further ado, let me call upon my dear friend, senior columnist of the Edmonton Sun, a man who needs no introduction in this room, Lorne Gunter.
I have to admit I'm conflicted sometimes about whether I will sing the national anthem or not. It's hard for me to explain that, but I'm guessing it's a little hard for a lot of people in this room to explain that too. I think if Alberta does leave, and as Ezra has said, I think there are a number of scenarios, including full independence. But if Alberta does leave, we can say Canada left us. We didn't leave Canada. If you read the Canadian Constitution, I don't recognize the country based on the Constitution. So that means something has changed since Confederation, and since we joined Confederation in 1905. So, you know, as I said, but I'm conflicted. I'm not fully at independence yet, but I'm not far away. And I think there are an awful lot of people in this room who have lived their lives in Alberta and have seen us make one attempt after another to try and change things. I was at the Economic Education Association meeting in Red Deer over the weekend, where there was a lot of talk about independence as well. And Max Byrne maybe. They're not, you know. Max is a little bit of a loose cannon at times. But I don't know that there's a federal leader who articulates policies that I agree with more than Max does. So Max is a smart guy. I think and politically he'll let his ego get in the way of politics, but he's a smart guy and I like him. And he said, you know, I don't think that Alberta will do itself any favors by going down the independence road. You know, you'll create divisions internally, you'll be at odds with Ottawa all the time. Not that that's going to change anything. And I wanted to ask, in fact, I think I wrote about this on Tuesday, where's he been for 40 years? And we've been at odds with Ottawa as long as I can remember. And if it wasn't the National Energy Program and the Triple E Senate and the Reform Party, it was the crow's nest pass rates. You know, there are enough people in this room who have memories as long as mine that, you know, we were being this is how ridiculous it was in Western Canada. It was cheaper to sell your grain and ship it to be milled in Ontario than it was for mills to build in Alberta and create an economic, and add economic value here. It's insane. Now, you know, some of those things were and the crow's nest rate is one of them, were well-intentioned when they first started. Lots of these things where we were tiny, we couldn't afford to do all of our development here, but as we grew, the vested interests in central Canada said, no, we like it the way it is, and we're not going to change. We're not going to recognize that Alberta has evolved, or the West has evolved. And so, that's where I'm at. Like, how many more times do we need to try and change things? I think we need to do the firewall approach until such time as we figure out whether we want full independence or not. We just have to start protecting ourselves and our interests as much as we can. It's not a lot, but as much as we can from what Ottawa does. You know, one of the things is to talk about, well, should we have an Alberta pension plan? Get out of CPP and start an Alberta pension plan. Then, as far as I'm concerned, the numbers say yes. We put in 16.5% of all the premiums into CPP last year. We took out 10.6% of the benefits. And that's not like equalization, which is a system that's stacked against. That's demographics. We have a young population. We don't have as many seniors as a lot of other provinces. That's just the way it works. But that's $3 billion a year that we could keep in Alberta and invest in our own economies, in our own structures, whatever it is we wanted to do. And I would do it just for the entertainment value. I'd just love to see people in central Canada run around with their hair on fire. We can't be afraid of doing things like that. If they don't work, we go back. So what? You know, this is the kind of province where somebody phones you at 2 o'clock in the morning, you drive out to the well site, you don't know exactly what the problem is with the piece of equipment you're looking at, you try something, if it doesn't work, you try it again, you phone somebody else, they come, they take over. You know, that's how we work here. So let's try a few things, and if other people don't like them, tough luck. You know, that's where I'm at the moment. I want to talk in my second go-around about the mountain you have to climb if you really do want independence, and that's not to say we shouldn't try independence if that's what we all agree on, or most of us agree on. But it is a huge task, so we have to be prepared for that too. But one thing I just want to leave with you, and this also comes out of Max's talk in Red Deer on the weekend. He said, you're going to have some of the problems Quebec did. Yes, but I think Alberta independence would be very different from Quebec independence. Quebec could never bring itself to leave. Jacques Parizeau called Quebec nationalism the never-ending trip to the dentist. And that's because they could never give up the money. They pretend like the money isn't important, that their nationality, but the money is the key to it all. And I think if they had voted for independence, the Central Canada would have fallen all over themselves trying to persuade them to stay or give them good deals. It would be the opposite. If we decide to go, it will be done quickly because the economics are in our favor, but Ottawa will put obstacles in our road until hell won't happen, because they will think of us, as Ezra said, as bigots and rubes. Within the last 10 years, I have had a person from Toronto ask me if all of the streets in Edmonton are paved. Yeah, better than the streets in Toronto are paved. Anyway, that's my introduction. That's where I'm at right now on independence. I think we have to be acting independently. When we go all the way to full independence, we need to be talking about that.
Thank you, Lorne. And I'd also like to take a second to thank Holly and Riley, our volunteers who were helping check everybody in at the merchandise table out tonight. Thank you, Holly. Our next speaker is our chief reporter and our Alberta Bureau chief, Sheila Gunn. I met Sheila through Twitter because she just was fighting all the time, in a good way, And I never saw her put a word wrong. She was taking it to the bad guys every day. I said, who is this person? And boy, was that a great day when she joined the rebel. And she, I don't even need to tell you this because you know this. She is the best-selling Alberta political author ever. I don't know how many copies Bill Aberhart's books sold in the 30s, so I don't want to say ever, but certainly in recent times, her book, Stop Notley, was a #1 bestseller. Her book, The Unauthorized Biography of David Suzuki, was a #1 bestseller. And her first book, that really put Rachel Notley at odds with her, The Destroyers, was a #1 bestseller, and according to Postmedia, it was the best-selling Alberta political book. So I'm actually relying on an outside source, not just my own pride. Sheila doesn't just, and that's why, by the way, Rachel Notley had such a hatred for Sheila, because she was so effective. That's why they banned Sheila from the legislature. Do you remember that? That's why Lorne Gibson, who is no hero, hired private investigators to go after Sheila for 6 months for writing her book. That's not the Canadian way, that's not the WEXIT way, that's the Venezuelan way. Yeah, Lorne Gibson's no victim. Sheila also, every year, through crowdfunding, goes to the UN Global Warming Conference and does more independent reporting than literally the 3,000 stenographer journalists who attend. Would you agree with me on that? And I shouldn't give it away, but we're all friends here. Sheila and Keean are about to go to this year's UN Global Warming Conference in Madrid, Spain, and they are going to do a great job together. Standing up in the World Cup. Without further ado, let me introduce to you someone who has Alberta in her veins, my friend Sheila Gunn.
Well, I think now's probably a good time to ask the boss for a raise after that glowing introduction. You are free to back out of that one. I guess I'm here tonight because I'm a reluctant separatist. I want somebody to convince me, using something other than nostalgia, why Alberta belongs in this country. Because like Lorne said, they left us. And I'm not sure that Confederation wasn't ever broken. I think from the very beginning. Let me just, as Ezra was talking, because I had a full work day today, and then I'm the AV guy today also, but I was making some notes as Ezra was talking about what it's like in other places, what it's like in Texas. Texas right now is experiencing growth rates in their economy more than double what's going on in the rest of the United States. And the rest of the United States is experiencing growth rates higher than that of Canada. Houston, Texas, right now is responsible for 30% of the jobs being created in Texas. And Houston, I would equate to Calgary. It's the oil patch hub for them. Texas' unemployment rate right now is 3.4%, and it's less than that in Midland, Texas. They're experiencing basically 0% unemployment in those places. They've added, in October, the state of Texas, 30,100 jobs. It's the 5th consecutive month of record low unemployment in Texas. And again, 30% of those jobs are being created in Texas's version of Calgary. What's it like in Calgary right now? Well, in Calgary, the Conference Board of Canada says that Edmonton and Calgary will experience the weakest economic performance out of 13 major cities in Canada this year. We're not the economic engine of this country anymore. We could be, we're just not, when we compare ourselves to other oil-producing nations in the world. Our unemployment rate in Alberta is exactly double that of what it is in Texas. Exactly double. In Canada, we didn't create jobs last month. While Texas created over 30,000, we lost 1,800 jobs in this country. Our economy is shrinking. 89% of businesses in Calgary say the economic state has deteriorated, and insolvencies are in Alberta. So business insolvencies, bankruptcies, people closing their doors from big businesses like Red Robin to the little guy down the street that just one day it's closed and he's quietly gone. 70% they've gone up since 2015. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And what are we getting? What are we getting from the mainstream media? What are we getting about from our moral and intellectual superiors in the rest of the country? In 2018, Tristan Hopper wrote in the National Post why Alberta separatism is the dumbest political movement in Canada today. You're getting condescension. You're losing everything. Your neighbors are losing everything. You were proud Canadians. I was. I would love to remain that way. My family's been in this province since 1903. I live on the land they broke. I live there. It matters to me. I'm deeply connected to Alberta, and I cannot see what everybody's going through and thinking the best way is to remain. Because what will happen? For me, in 30 years, we're going to go through this again. How many times do we have to do this? How many times? No more times. And a firewall, yeah, that's great. But when we have a federal government that right now is currently looking to impose a carbon tax, despite the will of the people who voted for a government that was elected, probably most of you voted for Jason Kenney, A, because he wasn't Rachel Notley, and B, because he said he'd get rid of the carbon tax. Well, now you have a federal government that's going to impose it on you. You think they're going to care about your firewall? No. So I'm looking for somebody to convince me that there's a way forward in Canada, because I don't see it.
You know, Detroit used to be the richest city in America by some measures. Not by every measure. San Francisco and New York were always rich, but Detroit had the highest industrial wage in America. That's why everyone went there. That's why African Americans went there. They could get a job in a factory and make some serious money. And that city was an amazing achievement. Industry, entrepreneurship, and it was undone by politics. Why do you think Alberta is somehow immune to politics? Why do we think it's somehow different from the tides of time? I sometimes think of, I know you'll think I'm funny for even mentioning this. You know, Constantinople was once the largest city in the world, was once the richest city in the world. It was the most Christian city in the world. Now it is none of those things. It was sacked. It's called Istanbul. The great church, the Hagia Sophia, was turned into a mosque. Things rise and they fall. And why would we think that Alberta must be successful? It's not destiny other than what we make. And Alberta's had its tough times before, and it comes back. But I saw a fellow with a hat that said the West wants out. And it reminded me that the first time I met a lot of people in this room was 30 years ago with Preston Manning, and his motto was the West wants in. And he said, hey guys, let's take all this energy and let's put it into fixing things, reforming it from the inside. I'm old enough now to have done that once, and it didn't seem to work, and so I'm seeing it again. And why would a Reform Party style approach work a second time? What's different this time, it feels to me, is that at least last time, I think Pierre Trudeau only just wanted to steal the oil money. He didn't want to stop it from being pumped. He wanted it to be pumped, he just wanted to take all the riches and give it to Quebec. But what we have now are some ideological utopians who don't even want the oil. So they say, now they're importing it from America and OPEC. They want oil. I mean, you think they're not driving in Montreal? They bring it in by train from the United States, and by the way, they pay a higher price for it than our below market price oil from the West. It's insanity. And you would think the lac mégantic explosion would shake them out of, why are you bringing in oil by rail? I got nothing against rail. I'm just saying you don't have explosions of pipelines in the middle of a city like that. But that didn't shake them out of it. They love their Sharia oil. They're bringing in Bill 21 to ban the burqa, but they're bringing in the Sharia oil from Saudi Arabia. It doesn't make sense. It's madness, and my point of saying all of that is, it doesn't feel like it's soluble. It doesn't feel like, and all these op-eds I'm reading in the CBC and the Toronto Star, they end the same way. Hey guys, just transition off it. We'll help you get a job coding or something. I find it deeply depressing. And on that unhappy note, I first detected Keean Bexte when I got into a fight with him on Twitter. I was fighting with his boss, Preston Manning, who used to be my boss